He never rushed to explain himself. Clapton always let the notes do the talking. Every bend, every pause, every silence, carrying more weight than words ever could.
Begging, darling, please.
For decades, he's been called God by fans, Slowhand by peers, and Restless by anyone who's tried to follow his trail. But behind every solo and every song lies something quieter, devotion. Not to fame, to sound, to the bands that shaped him, challenged him, and never let him settle. He once said he plays to stay honest. These are the records that kept him that way. Here are the 10 rock albums Eric Clapton calls his favourites, albums that taught him how to listen and how to live. Number 1. Music from Big Pink by the band. In 1968, when rock reached for spectacle, Clapton found silence and space inside music from Big Pink. The band's humility and warmth reminded him that honesty could hit harder than volume, and truth could sing louder than fame. When Clapton first heard the album, he was standing at a crossroads. Cream had dissolved into chaos, endless solos, clashing egos, noise without stillness. But this record felt like a whisper that carried farther than a scream. It wasn't about showmanship, it was about substance. He later said, "Music from Big Pink changed the way I thought about being a musician. It made me want to disappear into the song instead of standing in front of it." The band made music that felt communal, not competitive. The rhythms breathed, the harmonies felt like conversations, and the emotion lived in restraint. For Clapton, it was a revelation. Greatness didn't need volume, it needed vulnerability. From that moment, his compass shifted. He didn't just want to impress, he wanted to belong to something that felt real. Number 2. Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs by Derek and the Dominoes. This was the album that bled. It wasn't just music, it was confession. Layla carried love, loss, and redemption tangled together. For Clapton, every note was memory, every chord a wound he chose to reopen until it healed. When Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs arrived, it wasn't a hit. It was too raw, too messy, too real. But that's what made it timeless. It was Clapton stripped of armor, buried inside a band that sounded more like therapy than performance. The chemistry with Duane Allman gave the songs a pulse that felt human, unrehearsed, uncertain, alive. He later admitted, "That record was my diary. Every track was something I couldn't say out loud. It's the sound of a man trying to love what he can't have and forgive himself for wanting it anyway. Bell Bottom Blues, Have You Ever Loved a Woman, Layla, all carried the ache of impossible devotion. For Clapton, this album wasn't crafted, it was survived. Even now, when he plays it live, you can hear the cost in every note. Number 3. Revolver by the Beatles. When Revolver landed, it sounded like the future disguised as melody. For Clapton, it proved that songs could be both intimate and infinite, and that evolution wasn't about volume, it was about vision. The record rewired everything he believed music could be.
In the words, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, so pieces again.
By 1966, the Beatles had already conquered pop. But Revolver wasn't about fame, it was about freedom. Every song broke a rule. Tomorrow Never Knows looped the impossible, Eleanor Rigby made strings feel like steel, and I'm Only Sleeping turned fatigue into philosophy. Clapton listened and realized rock could think as deeply as it could feel. He once said, "That was when I understood music didn't have to shout to change the world." What struck him wasn't perfection, it was imagination. The record's balance between spiritual curiosity and pop precision mirrored the creative risks he wanted to take. It invited him to color outside the lines. For Clapton, Revolver wasn't just an album, it was a map. It charted the way forward for any artist who dared to make the personal universal. Number 4. The Best of Muddy Waters by Muddy Waters. Before the world called him Slowhand, Clapton was a boy tracing Muddy's shadow. These recordings were raw and unpolished, exactly what made them perfect. Every growl, every hum of feedback felt like a message sent straight from the source.
Oh, child. Wine.
When he first heard Muddy, the world tilted. There was no polish, no production, just feeling. The blues wasn't about skill, it was about truth. Clapton sat alone with those records, absorbing the slide, the shuffle, the ache. He wasn't listening to a style, he was learning a language. He later said, "Muddy taught me that every note has a soul, and if it doesn't, you shouldn't play it." Those songs shaped his identity more than fame ever could. Decades later, when Clapton finally shared a stage with Muddy, it wasn't hero worship, it was gratitude. The boy who'd listened in the dark was standing beside the man who'd shown him the light. For Clapton, this wasn't influence, it was inheritance. Number 5. Are You Experienced? By the Jimi Hendrix Experience. When Hendrix arrived, Clapton felt the ground move. Are You Experienced wasn't a challenge, it was a revelation. It showed him what courage sounded like when channeled through 6 strings and absolute belief in freedom. The first time Clapton saw Hendrix perform in London, he was stunned into silence. What Hendrix did wasn't technique, it was translation. He turned electricity into emotion, bending time and tone with reckless precision. To Clapton, it felt like watching someone tear open the sky. He later said, Hendrix didn't play the guitar, he lived inside it. Are You Experienced changed the vocabulary of rock. It wasn't about speed or showmanship, it was about expression without restraint. Foxy Lady, Manic Depression, The Wind Cries Mary. Each track felt like a new frontier. Clapton realized then that mastery wasn't control, it was surrender. In Hendrix, he saw not a rival, but a reminder that true greatness never imitates. It creates its own gravity and drags the world forward with it. Number 6. Live at the Regal by B.B. King. If there was ever a record that taught Clapton grace, it was Live at the Regal. B.B. King didn't dominate, he conversed. Every pause mattered as much as every note, a reminder that the guitar could whisper and still command. Recorded in 1964 at a modest Chicago theatre, the album captured lightning made of patience. For Clapton, this was his textbook. King's phrasing carried authority without arrogance, emotion without chaos. Every bend was a sentence, every silence a breath. Clapton later reflected, "B.B. showed me that a single note, played with honesty, can outlive 1,000 solos." He studied every inflection until the guitar felt like a voice, not a weapon. Decades later, when the two finally performed together, it wasn't student meeting teacher, it was a conversation between equals, born from reverence. For Clapton, Live at the Regal wasn't an influence, it was a compass. Whenever he drifted too far into noise or ego, that record pulled him back to the center, to simplicity, to sincerity, to soul. Number 7. Disraeli Gears by Cream. Inside the storm of Disraeli Gears, Clapton found chemistry. 3 musicians pushing against limits and pulling melody from chaos. The album captured lightning in a bottle, showing how improvisation could sound both wild and precise, reckless and deeply human. This was the sound of discovery and destruction at once. Clapton, Jack Bruce, and Ginger Baker didn't plan harmony. They collided into it. Disraeli Gears was their creative peak and the beginning of their undoing. Psychedelia, blues, and noise mixed until they couldn't tell where one ended. Clapton later said, "It was beautiful mayhem. None of us could control it, but we didn't want to." The songs Strange Brew, Tales of Brave Ulysses, Sunshine of Your Love were alive with tension. Every riff sounded like an argument, every chorus like reconciliation. To the audience it was rebellion, to Clapton it was release. He learned that chaos could be a kind of truth, that sometimes the only way to find clarity is to get lost inside the noise. Number 8. Then Play On by Fleetwood Mac. Peter Green's sorrow ran through Then Play On like smoke through sunlight. Clapton heard in it the kind of vulnerability that could only come from truth. It wasn't performance, it was prayer. A haunting reminder that blues is born from silence.
I'll be your guiding hand, but don't ask me what I think of you. I might not give the answer that you want me to.
When Clapton first heard Peter Green play, he recognized something he couldn't fake: restraint as power, sadness as melody. Green didn't decorate the blues, he distilled it. The album shimmered between beauty and despair, turning pain into poetry. Clapton later said, "Peter was the only guitarist who ever truly scared me, not because he was better, but because he was real." Songs like Coming Your Way and Underway drifted with meditative grace, their emotions unspoken yet undeniable. Green's tone had the ache of memory, the weight of reflection. It reminded Clapton that mastery wasn't about perfection, it was about presence. In Then Play On, he heard the sound of surrender. It was the blues laid bare, stripped of glory, left with nothing but feeling. That honesty stayed with him long after the record ended. Number 9. At Fillmore East by the Allman Brothers Band. Clapton called this record a living conversation. It breathed, it stretched, it roared. At Fillmore East turned improvisation into language and made the stage feel sacred. For him, it was proof that structure and surrender could coexist in perfect time. What struck him wasn't the technique, it was the trust. Duane Allman led with instinct, weaving melodies like stories told without words. Each jam expanded and contracted like lungs. It wasn't chaos, it was communion. Clapton later reflected, they weren't just playing songs, they were speaking in sound. He admired how the band turned long improvisations into something spiritual, balancing discipline with freedom. It wasn't about showing off, it was about listening. Every moment depended on faith that the next note would find its place. When Clapton recorded Layla soon after, he invited Duane Allman to join him. The chemistry between them was immediate, electric, and born from the same truth that At Fillmore East captured: the belief that music could speak where words failed. Number 10. Highway 61 Revisited by Bob Dylan. More than any other, this album unlocked him. Highway 61 Revisited was poetry caught in electricity, a songwriter's rebellion that became a guitarist's guide. Dylan didn't just change lyrics, he changed possibility. Clapton listened and understood that honesty could be amplified. Dylan's voice was a weapon, nasal, unapologetic, filled with nerve. The record tore through convention, mixing blues, surrealism, and truth with no apology. For Clapton, it was a masterclass in courage. It proved that authenticity mattered more than approval. He once said, "Dylan showed me that imperfection could be power, that you don't need to sound right to mean something." Songs like Ballad of a Thin Man and Desolation Row unspooled like cinematic dreams. Every verse carried an ache that felt both personal and universal. It was the sound of art, refusing to stay safe. For Clapton, Highway 61 Revisited was more than influence, it was ignition. It taught him that music could be confession, confrontation, and creation all at once. Every artist has a map. For Clapton, it wasn't fame, or fashion, or even time, it was sound. These 10 albums weren't just favourites, they were coordinates, tracing the journey of a man searching for something purer than success. Each record carried a lesson: restraint over noise, truth over perfection, feeling over fame. From Muddy's grit to Dylan's defiance, from Hendrix's freedom to the band's humility, each one carved a piece of him. He once said that music, at its best, makes you disappear into it. Maybe that's what these albums gave him, a place to vanish and to be found again. Legacy isn't built from volume, it's built from honesty, shared across generations, one record at a time. What album shaped your idea of truth? Tell us below, and subscribe for more untold stories from music's silent corners.